there's always been a battle in AI between what he called the neats and the scruffs.
100%.
You know what that means. Looks like you know what that means, Rob. But he says the needs want believe that there's some perfect logic tree that you can build that will faithfully represent reality, and all your options and choices will be and contingencies will be on that logic tree. And the scruffs say, "You silly man, that doesn't exist at all." And what we stumble into as we continue to stumble is always going to be the best of all possible worlds, because it's the only possible of the possible worlds. It's the way we went, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. He called himself, I'm basically a scruff, but I'm neat compatible kind of thing, you know. uh and uh and I just saying that made me think, I think basically it's easier for scruffs to be neat compatibles than the
Yes.
other direction. But maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to be challenged.
No, that's got to be true, because if you're a scruff,
Yeah.
part of the best possible path includes the needs because they exist. So it's just much
Right.
more inclusive, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
what do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that part of being a neat is kind of being intolerant in a way. I don't mean that to be an insult, but you have a very rigid idea of what is and what isn't, and so you can't necessarily accept the scruffs into your camp. Um, I guess I'd be curious to hear where you would place yourselves on the neat to scruff spectrum, and is it important to be neat compatible if you're more on the scruff side?
You want to go first, Julia? Or
Sure. I mean, I'm definitely a scruff. But I was trained up as a neat.
Hmm.
So I feel like I can talk to neats and understand neats.
Yeah.
Uh, and I see it as I see both as necessary. Like this
Yeah.
is I live where you're talking about it. I like to live in this middle path where it's like
Hmm.
that's necessary. My nature is sort of like this, but my nature is only one possible type of nature. But that's a scruff way of thinking, right? So
Hmm.
I definitely think I'm neat compatible and even have admiration for that, because if you're going to go in that deep worldview, you do make progress. Like
Hmm.
you can make some progress because you are defining some rules that are there, or that
Hmm.
seem to speak to some portion of the substrate of reality or something. And so it's like that's progress, that's useful. And if you push it too hard, it breaks.
Hmm.
It always breaks. And so it's the pushing it too hard that I sort of think, okay, that's where you gotta let it go.
yeah. So I am definitely a scruff by nature.
Hmm.
Uh, the thing about scruffiness that I like in relationship to neatness is I love to be underestimated. I
Hmm.
There is no position that I would rather be in than be in a meeting where I know people have no expectations of me.
Right.
And then I say something which needed to be said, which everyone goes, "That was useful. Why are you saying it?"
Yeah.
Yes, I totally relate to that.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah,
you get it, right?
that's a glee. It's like, ha ha ha, you didn't know what I could contribute.
You're
Yeah.
being so neat. You've totally ignored this huge road over here, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
It almost gives you permission to be the one. I mean, the other people who
Mhm.
have all the expectation can't say the thing that everyone's thinking but won't say.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so where
Have
do
you
you
ever read
see
this?
well, okay,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Just go with where you were going.
I was going to ask if you've ever read this book by Lewis Hyde called Trickster Makes the World. Trickster Makes This World.
No,
I
that sounds
I
amazing.
I don't think I have. I am familiar with uh sort of the discussion around the trickster
The archetype.
archetype, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So,
that book sounds amazing. We're going to stick it in the show notes. Can you tell us about it? That sounds really cool.
oh, it's such a wonderful book. I mean, I haven't read it in a number of years now. I should go back and revisit it. But it's exactly what you would think. It's about trickster archetypes, and it's kind of a cross cultural comparison of different trickster archetypes and why they pop up in basically every culture, and the role they play, and then some kind of real world examples of people who you might identify with the trickster archetype. And um, uh, yeah, I don't know if I'm doing it justice, but
No,
that's the
I
direction that it's
I
in.
definitely have to read that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So where do you
it's
think
tremendous.
of yourself? I mean, so my impression of you is
Mhm.
that you are neater than either Julia and I, although that may just be because you have such a neat haircut.
No,
I
I
did get a
sense
haircut
that.
yesterday, so it was a little scruffier before. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe it's a little like you, Carmen, in that you like being underestimated. Um, maybe I get some utility or some joy out of people thinking I'm neater than I am.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think people, the neats can identify a scruffy from a mile away, and to some extent, because they're the less tolerant side of the spectrum, if that's the case, you'll never fully get to know them, I guess, or maybe their guard will always be a little up, if you just lead with the rougher parts, or the you know with the idea that certain outlandish ideas are possible, or you should open your mind to more potential, um, and so to convince them of that, maybe it's helpful to appear neater.